By the roadside stood a weathered shrine, partially hidden behind overgrown grass and twisted vines. A narrow dirt path wound around it, worn smooth by years of passing feet. This morning, as the dawnlight slowly filled the sky, a man emerged from the trees carrying a heavy sack. He was tall with broad shoulders, dressed in simple clothes that were clean but patched at the seams. His hair had begun to gray at his temples, and he moved quietly, not wanting to disturb anyone or anything. Nearby, an old woman sat on a wooden stool, her back straight as she tended to small offerings before the shrine. She was old enough for her spine to be curved slightly by time, but there was no weariness in her face, only quiet resolve. Her hands moved deftly as she placed fresh flowers and candles beside a worn statue of some forgotten deity. The man approached without hesitation, setting down his sack near a tree just outside the circle of influence around the shrine. The old woman noticed him immediately and offered a small nod in greeting. He returned her gesture before turning to open his sack, revealing dried herbs inside, each tied with string or twine. She watched silently as he began sorting through them, arranging bundles carefully on the ground beside him. When she couldn't hold back any longer, she stood and walked over, picking up a few strands of lavender that had fallen from one bundle to inspect their quality. "These are good," she said softly, her eyes reflecting approval. He looked up at her then, offering her a wry smile. "Thank you. They're all good ones." She nodded again, returning the lavender and stepping back slightly. There was an easy understanding between them that didn't need words to articulate, a shared knowledge of the rhythms of nature and care for the earth's offerings. While he continued sorting, she busied herself replacing old candles with fresh ones before lighting a stick of incense. The smoke drifted lazily upwards, mingling briefly in the air before dispersing into nothingness. She then turned her attention to the small basin by the shrine, filling it with clear water from a nearby spring. When he was done with his work, they shared a moment of quiet silence side by side. He seemed to appreciate the stillness as much as she did. There was no hurry in his movements as he gathered everything together once more into his sack. "Is this your market day here?" he asked softly, glancing at her. "No," she replied just as quietly. "Just my usual morning." He looked thoughtful for a moment before nodding again. Then, reaching out unexpectedly, he placed one of the smaller bundles from his work beside hers, along with an offering coin that clinked against the stone. She blinked in surprise but accepted both silently. "Thank you," she said softly, tucking them into her bag without further explanation or acknowledgement. As if concluding their interaction, he offered a final nod before turning to leave as quietly as he had come. The old woman watched him go, then turned back towards the shrine with renewed purpose, pouring fresh water over its base and speaking gently to it as she did every day, words of gratitude, perhaps, for all the offerings both given and taken. The morning sun now fully lit the space around them, but in the small clearing near the shrine, their brief exchange had left a gentle mark, quiet yet significant. A leaf fluttered down from above, catching briefly on the breeze before settling into place at her feet. Nothing more than that, yet everything.
You're listening to the Empty Teahouse. A faint breeze carried morning blooms to the village square where Nuri's reed nets awaited their fate.
In the village square on a market day, under the shade of an old oak tree, sat an elderly woman named Nuri. She spent her days crafting delicate nets from reeds for fishers and fishermen to mend their fishing gear. Her fingers moved with practiced ease as she wove strands together in intricate patterns. Nearby, a young man named Kiro stood selling baskets he had woven himself. His hands were rough and calloused from the work, but each basket was perfect, tight-woven circles that could hold anything carefully. As the sun climbed high into the sky, the market began to thin out. People hurried off with their purchases, leaving behind scattered offerings of fruit peels and empty cups on the ground around Nuri's small table. Hiro watched her from across the square, noticing how she never complained about the work or the crowd. Instead, she kept weaving. Eventually, he decided to approach her. "Excuse me," he said gently, "I see you're quite skilled with your nets." He pointed at a particularly complex one, its strands interwoven in a way that made it look almost like lace. "Thank you," Nuri replied simply. She smiled warmly but kept her eyes downcast as she worked. "I've been trying to mend my own nets for fishing, but I can't seem to make them strong enough." He held out one of the torn baskets he had brought from home. "If I could learn from someone like you." Without a word, Nuri set aside her current net and began explaining how each knot should be placed, showing him where his own work was weak. She guided his hands over hers as they worked together on a section, teaching him by doing. Hours passed without either speaking much beyond instructions or questions about the technique. The market faded around them until only a few stragglers remained. As Nuri tied off the final knot in the net Kiro had brought, she handed it back to him with a nod of approval. "Try this one in your fishing," she said softly. Kiro carefully wrapped his newly repaired basket and placed it beside her unfinished nets. "Thank you for taking time out of your day to teach me." She shook her head slightly, still watching his hands where they had worked so closely hers. "I am happy to share what I know." Her voice was quiet but firm. He bowed his head respectfully before moving away into the empty square. As he walked towards home, a light breeze picked up and caught the edge of one of Nuri's nets that lay half-finished on her table, its delicate loops and knots fluttering softly in the wind like whispered secrets.
The net's shadow stretched long as the day cooled, and a mountain path invited weary travelers home under moonlight.
In the mountain footpath after rain, the mud was dark and wet. Old Tanaka walked slowly, his shoes making sucking sounds with each step. Beside him, a young woman named Yuki held an umbrella over them both, shielding him from the dripping leaves. Tanaka paused at a crossroads where two paths met, one leading uphill into the misty forest, the other down towards the village. He sighed deeply, as if releasing something heavy from within. "This was where I left my youth," he murmured to Yuki, who nodded silently, her face thoughtful under the gray sky. They moved forward onto the downward path, the earth growing firmer and less muddy with each step away from the highlands. Tanaka talked little, his thoughts inward. When they reached a small wooden bridge over a babbling stream, he stopped again, staring at the water's surface where ripples disturbed by their passing footsteps slowly smoothed out. "Tell me," Yuki said softly, "what were you thinking about up there?" Tanaka looked at her briefly before turning his gaze back to the calm waters. "Just remembering when I was young and strong, dreaming of mountains beyond mountains." Yuki offered him a half-smile. "Are you sad that it's over now?" He shook his head. "Not sad exactly. Just noticing how different things are." They continued walking, but Tanaka didn't walk alone with the scenery this time. The path wound through a forest where the trees stood tall and straight, their branches heavy with leaves. Birds chirped from above, adding to the quietude. As they emerged into an open field, a small village lay ahead, no more than 10 or 12 houses clustered around a square. Yuki led Tanaka towards her family's home. She unlocked the door and invited him inside. "Would you like tea?" she asked while removing her shoes at the entrance. "No, I'm fine," he said, sitting on a cushion near the hearth. "Just give me a moment." Yuki nodded and stepped into another room to prepare for guests. Tanaka watched as she moved about efficiently, her steps graceful despite carrying heavy pots and bowls. When she returned with 2 steaming cups of tea, she handed one to him without speaking. They drank in silence for some time, the sound of wood crackling from the fire providing a rhythmic backdrop. Finally, Yuki set down her cup and said quietly, "You should tell me more about those mountains." Tanaka looked up at her curiously but smiled warmly. He began to speak slowly, recalling tales of his youth spent wandering among peaks, where only eagles flew freely and the world below seemed far away. With each sentence, he described landscapes steeped in legend and lore, places where he had lost everything dear to him, yet found solace nonetheless. As Tanaka spoke, Yuki listened intently but remained quiet. When his voice trailed off into a whisper of memory, she simply handed him another cup filled with steaming tea. He accepted it gently, feeling the warmth seep through his fingers as he raised it to drink. Outside, dusk fell like a heavy blanket upon the village, softening edges and dimming lights until all that remained were shadows dancing against walls and doorways. Inside Yuki's house, Tanaka finished his cup of tea and placed it carefully on the table beside him. He stood up slowly, stretching stiff muscles from sitting so long. "I should be going now," he said softly, though his voice held no regret or urgency. Yuki nodded and led him back through familiar rooms to the entrance hall where his shoes awaited. As they stepped outside together under the starlit sky, Tanaka stopped briefly at the threshold. He looked down into the village square below them, the same one he had left decades ago, now filled with new faces and stories of its own. Without a word, Yuki held out her hand to him. In it lay an old wooden flute she'd found among her late father's belongings, once belonging to Tanaka himself before he departed for the mountains so long ago. Tanaka took the flute from her palm and turned back towards the house. He slipped inside momentarily, emerging moments later with a small leather bag in hand which contained music sheets and instructions. With a slight nod of gratitude, he placed both items carefully into Yuki's arms. Then, as if sensing his next step, she stepped aside to let him pass freely through the door one final time. Outside, Tanaka walked alone down the winding path towards the mountainside, where only moonlight guided his way. In his hand was a flute ready for playing, its song filling the air as he disappeared into darkness and mist.
Moonlight caught an old flute's silver edge as winter's frost clung tight. Lantern light flickered in the crisp night air at Mr. Tan's noodle stall.
On a winter night, the village was hushed under a sheet of frost, and the stars shone coldly. The street lamps flickered as if hesitant to light up the dark corners where shadows lingered. At the corner of an alley stood a small noodle stall, its roof smoking gently into the chilly air. Inside, a single flame danced in a lantern, throwing deep shadows across the face of Mr. Tan, the elderly noodle vendor. A man approached with slow, measured steps, his shoulders slumped under the weight of a long day's work. His name was Jean, and he had come from the rice paddies to buy some warmth for his bones. The stall door creaked open as if announcing his arrival, and Mr. Tan looked up, a wisp of smoke curling from beside him. "Good evening," said Jean, pulling off his damp gloves. Mr. Tan nodded in greeting. "Have you eaten today?" Jean shook his head. His stomach growled faintly, an echo of the silence outside. "I'll have what's on offer then." Mr. Tan set about preparing a bowl of noodles, ladling in just enough broth to tease Jin's hunger without quenching it entirely. As he worked, Jean watched him, observing the quiet grace with which Mr. Tan moved, even though his hands trembled slightly. "Have you been here long?" Jean asked, once the silence between them seemed too thick to bear. Mr. Tan stirred the noodles gently and said, "Since before your father's time." Jean nodded, remembering the stories of old men in the village who had served longer than any memory could trace back. The bowl was placed in front of Jean with a small splash. He took up his chopsticks and began to eat slowly, savoring each mouthful. The noodles were simple but perfect, their texture smooth against his teeth, the broth warm and soothing. "I've been thinking," Mr. Tan said suddenly, looking across at Jin's shadowed face, "about why we do this." Jean paused mid-chew, considering the question. He knew what Mr. Tan meant without needing to ask. Each day they performed their tasks with little fanfare, each action a part of the ongoing dance that kept the village alive. "You keep us fed," Jean finally replied softly, Mr. Tan smiled faintly and added a few more noodles to his own bowl. And you feed me. Jin's eyes widened slightly at this reversal, but he nodded in agreement, understanding how their exchange wove them together into a web of mutual support. The silence returned then, deeper now that its meaning had been acknowledged. Jin finished his meal and stood up, placing a small coin on the counter beside Mr. Tan's hand. "Thank you," he said simply. Mr. Tan picked up the coin but did not pocket it right away. Instead, his eyes met Jin's for just a moment before reaching behind him to retrieve an extra packet of noodles wrapped in paper. "For tomorrow night," he said quietly, pressing it into Jin's gloved hand. Jin hesitated slightly, then accepted the gift with both hands, bowing his head as if in gratitude or farewell. He knew Mr. Tan would be there again when dawn turned to dusk and winter gave way to spring, serving those who needed sustenance just as he had for generations. Outside, the cold air nipped at Jin's cheeks as he walked down the alleyway towards home, leaving behind a small puff of warm breath in the chilly night air. The noodle stall door creaked shut softly once more, and Mr. Tan resumed his vigil, the solitary flame flickering gently against the darkness.
A gentle breeze whispered through elm leaves as Jin's tea stall hummed with market day chatter after the cold glow of lanterns.
In the village square on a market day, there's always something to be found. Today is no different for Jean, an old woman who sells tea. Her stall sits in the shade of a large elm tree, its branches heavy with leaves that rustle softly whenever a breeze blows through. Nearby, a soldier returns home, but not by choice. His uniform gone, he wears simple clothes now, and his movements are cautious as if unsure how to act without his former attire guiding him. He wanders the square, eyes scanning each face, trying to recall who they might be or what stories once connected them. Jean notices him from across the way. She watches silently for a moment before approaching. "Come here," she says gently, waving toward her stall. The soldier looks at her with surprise, but follows without question. Jean sets down a cup of tea in front of him and pulls out another small chair from under her table. As he sits, the steam rises softly above the cup. She speaks again after a moment. "Do you remember this place?" Her voice is soft, yet carries weight. The soldier nods slowly, memories stirring but not fully surfacing yet. Jean doesn't push for more than that initial nod. Instead, she turns back to her stall and begins packing up a few items of tea into small bags, organizing them neatly side by side on the wooden counter. Her movements are practiced and sure, leaving little room for wasted motion or indecision. The soldier watches her work, his eyes softening slightly as he takes another sip of the warm tea. It's quiet between them, but not uncomfortable. Jean knows how to create such spaces where words aren't always necessary. After some time passes, the soldier sets down his cup and lets out a long breath. "I was going to ask you about your life here," he begins hesitantly. But instead of speaking immediately, he looks around at the square again, taking in the familiar sights now different yet unchanged. Children playing, vendors setting up stalls. Jean waits quietly as he collects his thoughts. When she sees him ready to speak again, she nods subtly and hands him another cup refilled with hot tea. He accepts it almost instinctively, the warmth a reminder of home even if that place isn't exactly where he stands now. "Can you tell me about this?" The soldier holds out the small bag of tea she'd prepared for him. "What does it mean to you?" Jean smiles slightly, then reaches into her stall and pulls out another empty bag similar to his. She starts rolling leaves into each one carefully, pausing occasionally as if savoring the moment before continuing on. Each day, Jean says softly, still focusing on her task, "I make choices just like this." Her hands move deftly between bags now full and ones waiting to be filled. Each leaf tells its own story wrapped neatly inside the fabric of each bag. The soldier watches as she completes the pair of tea bags and ties them with delicate knots, holding one out for him when done. He takes it gently in his hand, feeling the weight of the leaves through the thin material. "Thank you," he says sincerely, the gesture binding them together without any spoken words needed between them. Jean returns to her quiet work, leaving room once more for reflection and thought as market day continues around them. She finishes packing away her supplies, but stays nearby at her stall until it's time to close up shop late in the afternoon. As Jean packs the last of her tea bags into boxes ready for delivery tomorrow, she glances over at where the soldier had been sitting earlier. He's gone now, likely moved on down another path, though perhaps not quite as lost or alone as he was when first stepping out onto the square this morning. She ties one final knot in a string that keeps everything tidy and secure within her box of tea before setting it aside. The sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cobbled streets, now mostly empty save for a few lingering conversations and the soft sound of crickets beginning their evening song. In the stillness of late afternoon, Jean straightens up from her stall and heads home, cupping one hand around another small bag of tea given to her by an unknown passerby earlier that day. The weight of it feels light, yet full, memories wrapped neatly in paper-thin leaves, held together with care.
The lantern flame steadied again under the elm's rustling branches, where dusk gathered like old friends sharing quiet thoughts. Stay if you can. The kettle cools at the Empty Teahouse. Until tomorrow.